On my wedding night, my husband handed me a prenup and said, "Sign this or this marriage is over." He thought I'd have no choice, until I revealed what I had secretly prepared, and his face turned pale because the night was supposed to be one of the most memorable of my life, the culmination of years of love, laughter, and dreams for the future. My wedding was a fairy tale, a blend of elegant vows, family, and friends gathered in celebration. The hall was filled with soft music, the aroma of fresh flowers, and the glow of candles reflecting in everyone's eyes. Everything was perfect, or at least it should have been. I had imagined this day for years, walking down the aisle, the man I loved waiting at the altar. But nothing prepared me for what would happen in the quiet aftermath of our wedding reception. Before we dive into today's story, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being part of this incredible journey. We're hitting 10K subscribers, and it's all because of your support. If you're enjoying these empowering stories, don't forget to subscribe. It's completely free and helps us grow this amazing community. Now let's dive in. We had just entered the private room for our first night together. He, my new husband, was all smiles, perhaps more so than I had seen in weeks. He was charming as always, the kind of man who could talk his way into anything. But behind those perfect smiles I could sense a coolness, an edge. Something wasn't right. He sat me down gently on the bed and handed me a piece of paper. At first I thought it was a gift. Some romantic gesture, perhaps an agreement to go on a dream vacation. My heart swelled as I reached for it. "Sign this," he said simply, as if his words were as light as a feather, as if they meant nothing at all. But the paper he handed me was cold, heavy with a message I didn't expect. A prenuptial agreement. "Sign this or this marriage is over." The words hit me like a brick, shattering the bliss of the evening in one fell swoop. I froze. I stared at the document, unable to process what was happening. His voice was casual, his posture unbothered, as though he truly believed I had no choice but to comply. And that's when it hit me, he didn't just want me as a partner. He wanted control. I glanced up at him, seeing the edge in his eyes. His arrogance wasn't masked in the slightest. The paper trembled slightly in my hands, the weight of it so much more than just ink on paper. The terms were clear. He would control the finances. His signature on the document meant that all shared assets, investments, and any potential business ventures would belong to him. I would have nothing, not even the smallest semblance of independence. If things went wrong, I would be left with nothing but the memory of a broken dream. It wasn't just a legal document. It felt like a cage. My chest tightened, and I suddenly felt like a mere accessory in his life. A possession, an item to be owned. How had it come to this? My mind raced, flashing back to all the moments I had trusted him, moments that now seemed so naive. It wasn't the love I thought we shared that was at stake. It was my very sense of self, my autonomy. For years I had been led to believe that we were partners, equals. But now, sitting here in the glow of our wedding night, I understood the truth. He was in charge and I was disposable. But I wasn't a fool. I had known the risks all along. There had been whispers, subtle comments, and warning signs that I had ignored or downplayed. Friends had mentioned it, how he was careful about his wealth, how he always kept a tight grip on what was his. But I had convinced myself that our love would be enough to balance any financial discrepancy. Now, as I sat in that room, clutching that piece of paper, I realized how wrong I had been. His words echoed in my ears. "Sign this or this marriage is over." The finality in his voice made it clear he wasn't bluffing. I could feel his eyes on me, studying my every move. He was watching, waiting for me to crumble, to do exactly what he expected. The silence stretched, but it was deafening. A cold, empty smile spread across his face as I continued to stare at the document. There was no pity in his eyes, no compassion. Only calculation. He believed he had me trapped, cornered, with no way out. But there was more at play here than he realized. He had underestimated me, and I was not about to let him win this game without a fight. I took a slow breath, my fingers tightening around the edges of the paper. What he didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment for months. I had seen the writing on the wall, and I had anticipated this exact scenario. He thought I was weak, that I wouldn't question his authority or the control he was attempting to impose on me. But I had my own plans. Without saying a word, I slowly folded the prenup and tucked it into the side drawer of the nightstand. His eyes narrowed, the smile faltering for the briefest of moments. He had expected me to comply, but I had refused. I was no longer the woman who would silently accept whatever life threw her way. This was my life, my future, and I would not allow him to dictate it. "Is this a joke?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief, though there was an unmistakable hint of frustration beneath it. "No," I replied, my voice steady. "But you clearly thought you could control me. You underestimated me." He scoffed. "I thought you understood the situation, the importance of this contract. You really think you can just walk away from all of this?" I smiled, a small knowing smile that made him pause. "You don't know me as well as you think you do." There was a tension in the air, thick and palpable. His expression shifted from disbelief to anger, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. His attempt to control me had been met with resistance, and for the first time he wasn't in charge. He was trapped in his own web of arrogance. "Do you really think you can just escape this? Do you think I'll just let you go?" "I'm not going." The tension lingered in the room, thick and suffocating. My heart pounded against my ribs, but my exterior remained calm, almost serene. I could feel his eyes drilling into me, searching for any sign of weakness. But I knew this moment was not just a confrontation. It was a pivotal turning point. I was no longer the woman who would silently bow to his will. As the minutes passed, I could feel the power shift between us, a silent, invisible force that was moving under the surface. I stood at the window, staring out into the dark city skyline, but my mind wasn't on the view. It was on the life I had been living, the quiet sacrifices I had made to keep up appearances, to preserve the image of a perfect marriage. How had I been so blind? The signs were there all along. His subtle dismissals of my opinions, the way he managed every financial decision, how my own autonomy seemed to slip further away with each passing day. I'd always admired his confidence, the way he navigated through life with such ease, but now I saw it for what it truly was: a need to control. He wasn't just confident, he was domineering. It wasn't just our shared life that was under his control, it was everything. From the way I spent money, to the people I interacted with, to the places I went, he had his hand in it all. But the worst part wasn't even the control itself. It was that I had allowed it. For years I'd turned a blind eye to the way he had slowly and methodically built walls around me. Walls I hadn't noticed until now. It wasn't until the prenup had been placed in front of me that I realized the full extent of his hold on me. Everything was laid bare. He controlled the finances, the investments, the assets. And, as I now understood, the future. It was like a waking nightmare. I had believed in the illusion of partnership, in the fairy tale that he had sold me. I had imagined that we were two equals, bound together by love. But the prenup was the final curtain to that fantasy. It was as if he had revealed the truth in the cruelest of ways. Our marriage was never about love. It was about ownership, and I had been the one blind to it. The silence between us stretched, but in my mind, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the calm before the storm. As I turned away from the window, I could see that he was trying to recover from the shock. His confident exterior had cracked for just a moment, but now he was regaining composure. He straightened his posture and attempted to mask the unease in his expression, but I could see through it. His bravado was slipping. His eyes flickered with a trace of fear of losing control. "Do you honestly think you can just waltz away from all of this?" His voice had lost some of its usual self-assurance, the edges of desperation creeping in. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you?" I didn't answer immediately. I took a moment to observe him. How he tried so hard to maintain the facade of authority, how he couldn't fathom that someone might challenge him, especially not me. But I had changed. His words, once so potent, now had the opposite effect. They only reminded me of how far I had come, how far I had been willing to go to break free from the chains he had wrapped around me. "I'm not walking away," I said softly, my voice steady and filled with an eerie calmness. "I'm staying. But I'm staying on my terms. Not yours." The look in his eyes shifted once again from frustration to something darker. His lips thinned into a line, and for a moment, it almost seemed as if he was considering something. Some hidden option that he thought could sway me back to his side. But I knew better now. The power dynamic had shifted. I had the upper hand and he was just beginning to realize it. "You're not the woman I thought I married," he muttered under his breath, almost as if speaking to himself. There was a trace of bitterness in his words, a hint of resentment. "This isn't you. You used to be so agreeable, so easy to manage." The insult stung, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I let out a quiet laugh, the sound foreign to my ears. Easy to manage. Is that how you saw me? Just another possession to be controlled. His face flushed red, the anger building in him. But his desperation was clear now, a far cry from the calm, controlled man I had married. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he tried to think of a way out, a way to reclaim the power he had just lost. But there was no way out. Not anymore. I don't need you to tell me who I am, I continued, the words coming more easily now. I don't need you to define me. I've been living in your shadow long enough, trying to fit into your idea of who I should be. But no more. You're not the only one who can play the game of control. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I've been preparing for this day, I said, my voice dropping into a whisper. I knew the day would come when I'd have to take a stand. And when it did, I needed to be ready. He took a step forward, his anger barely contained. You think you've won? You think you've outsmarted me? I nodded slowly. Yes. I've outsmarted you. The look on his face was something I would never forget. An unsettling mix of disbelief, rage, and fear. His mind was spinning, trying to grasp what was happening, trying to understand how I had been able to see through him all this time. I have my own prenup, I continued, my voice unwavering. One that favors me. One that protects my assets, my future. I won't be left with nothing, not after everything I've given up for you. He blinked, unable to process what I had just said. I could see his world crumbling in front of him, the carefully constructed reality he had built around me starting to fall apart. His grip on his emotions was slipping with every word, and I knew that this moment, the moment when everything he thought he had control over shattered, was only the beginning. You think you've won? He spat again, though now there was an edge of panic in his voice. You think I'll let you get away with this? But I didn't need to hear any more empty threats. I had won. The reality of that was beginning to sink in, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This wasn't just about the prenup or even about the money. It was about me reclaiming my life, my dignity. It was about me showing him, and myself, that I was no longer the woman who would quietly accept whatever he handed me. I stood tall, looking at him one last time, my eyes unwavering. You don't control me anymore. And you never will again. The tension between us had reached a boiling point, but I could feel the heat of the moment starting to settle into a cold, calculating silence. He was still standing there, fuming, trying to regain his composure, but it was clear that the idea of losing control over everything was terrifying to him. My words had struck him harder than I had imagined. He couldn't reconcile the image of me as the obedient wife he had always manipulated with the woman standing before him now, calm, unyielding, and in control. He hadn't seen it coming. He had believed that I was nothing more than a docile partner, someone who would never question his authority. He had thought the prenup was his final weapon, the last tool he needed to ensure that his grip on our marriage and on me would be unchallenged. But I wasn't who he thought I was. I never had been. I'm still waiting for you to realize that this is over, I said, my voice soft but firm as I watched him struggle to make sense of the situation. You think you can control me with that prenup, but you've never known who I really am. His confusion morphed into anger, but there was something else in his eyes too, a flicker of fear. Fear that I was no longer the woman who would be pliable to his wishes. His jaw clenched as he took a step toward me, his voice rising with the same arrogance that had always been present. You're playing a dangerous game. You think you're clever, don't you? I tilted my head slightly, considering his words. It was clear he was trying to intimidate me, to reassert the power he thought he still held. But what he didn't know was that I had been playing this game long before tonight. You're the one who's played with fire, not me, I said quietly, the words hanging in the air like an unspoken truth. And now you're about to get burned. He stopped in his tracks, a mixture of confusion and anger brewing behind his eyes. I could tell he was trying to make sense of my sudden shift in demeanor. He had underestimated me for too long, and now he was reeling, trying to catch up. You think I don't have a plan? I continued, watching the expression on his face change with each passing second. You think I've just been sitting back letting you pull the strings? Well, I've been preparing for this moment for months. You're not the only one who can play this game. The realization hit him like a cold splash of water. He looked as though the ground had been ripped out from beneath him. The control he thought he had over me was slipping through his fingers, and now he was struggling to regain his footing. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in him before. He had been so sure of himself, so confident in his manipulation. But now there was uncertainty. The realization that I had outsmarted him was beginning to settle in, and it was a blow he wasn't prepared for. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his voice now tinged with something close to panic. "What have you been doing behind my back?" I allowed a small knowing smile to curve my lips, savoring the moment. I had waited for this. I had waited for him to realize how far I had gone, how much I had prepared for this day. It wasn't just about a prenup anymore. It was about everything I had built in silence, while he had been too consumed by his own sense of superiority to notice. "I've been securing my future," I said slowly, letting the weight of my words sink in. "While you were busy thinking you controlled everything, I've been making sure I had something to fall back on. Something that would protect me no matter what you tried to do." His eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? What could you possibly have that I don't already control?" I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched his frustration grow. He still didn't get it. He still didn't understand how far I had gone. "I'm talking about investments. Business ventures. Things you would never think to look at. I've been setting things up in my own name. I've built a safety net, one that you can't touch." His face paled. The reality of what I was saying hit him like a tidal wave, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear flicker across his features. He had always been the one with control, the one who thought he could predict every move I would make. But now the tables had turned. "You've been investing behind my back?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "You've been building your own fortune and I never knew?" I nodded, watching him struggle to reconcile the truth. "You were too busy focusing on controlling me to notice. But I knew that someday I would need to protect myself. And now I have." His shoulders slumped, and for a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. But I quickly shook off the sentiment. He had made his choice long ago, and now he had to deal with the consequences. He had underestimated me in every way possible, and now I was forcing him to face the reality of his mistake. "You think you can just walk away with everything, don't you?" he spat, his frustration now fully evident. "You think you can just take everything I've worked for and leave me with nothing?" "I'm not taking anything from you," I replied calmly. "I'm simply ensuring that I'm not left with nothing like you wanted. This marriage was never about fairness to begin with. You made sure of that. But I'm not playing by your rules anymore." The shift in his demeanor was palpable. His anger was still there, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of helplessness. He had always prided himself on being in control, on having the upper hand, but now that control was slipping away. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Why can't we just be a team? Why does it have to be like this?" The question caught me off guard, not because it was unexpected but because of the raw emotion in his voice. I had never heard him speak to me like that. It was as if he was finally realizing what he had taken from me all these years. The partnership, the equality, the trust. But it was too late for apologies, too late for regret. "Because you never saw me as an equal," I said quietly. "You never saw me as someone worthy of being treated fairly. And now you're learning the hard way that I won't let you control me anymore." There was a long silence between us, the weight of everything hanging in the air. His facade of power was crumbling, and I knew that this was just the beginning. But I was ready. I had spent too long building this moment, and now that it had arrived, I wasn't going to let it slip away. He looked at me for a long time, his expression a mixture of disbelief and rage. But in his eyes I saw something else too, a faint, fleeting understanding. He realized now that the game had changed. And he was no longer the one holding the cards. The atmosphere between us had thickened with the weight of silence. His rage, now fully unleashed, was unmistakable, but I could sense his uncertainty. For the first time I had put him on the defensive, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. The man who had once dominated every situation, who had always been the one pulling the strings, was now grasping at straws, trying to figure out how to regain control of a situation he could no longer manage. I watched him as he stood there, visibly trembling with frustration, his fists clenched at his sides. His usual composure was gone, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a sharp pang of satisfaction. He had underestimated me. He had thought that I was just another part of his life to control, a passive player in the game he had been running for so long. But now the power had shifted and I was the one who held the upper hand. You don't know what you're doing, he spat, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You think you can just destroy everything we've built? Everything I've worked for? I took a step closer to him, deliberately slow, careful to maintain the control that was now mine. What have we really built, exactly? A life where I have no voice. Where everything I do is controlled by you, even down to the smallest detail. He recoiled at the accusation, but I could see the truth of it in his eyes. He had built his empire on the back of others' submission, and I had been one of his most loyal subjects. That was about to change. His eyes narrowed, his arrogance returning in waves as he tried to regain his composure. You're making a huge mistake. I will make sure you regret this. You think you've won, but you haven't even begun to understand what you're up against. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely curious. What exactly do you think you can do? I'm not afraid of you anymore. A low laugh escaped his lips, the sound cruel and mocking. You have no idea what I'm capable of, do you? You think just because you've secured a few investments behind my back you've won? It's cute. But it's not the real fight. You think you're walking away from this marriage with everything intact? Think again. My stomach twisted, but not with fear. No, there was no fear anymore. What he was saying, though, had a distinct air of danger, one that made me pause for a moment. Had I underestimated him? Was there something I hadn't accounted for in my plan? I couldn't allow myself to become distracted by doubt now. Not when I was so close to securing my future, to making sure I never had to rely on him again. I don't need your permission to leave, I said, my voice quiet but filled with an unwavering certainty. And as for your threats, I'm not worried. Not anymore. His eyes flickered with frustration, and for a moment, it seemed as though he was about to lash out. But then something shifted in his gaze. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I noticed it. He was recalculating, weighing his options. The panic had not fully left him, but he was trying to find a way to regain the upper hand. You're making a mistake, he repeated, this time with a more calculated tone. You think you're just going to walk out of here with all of your investments, your new life? It's not that simple. You don't know what's waiting for you when you try to go public with this. It'll ruin you. No one will believe you. No one will stand by you. The words stung, but I refused to show it. He was trying to intimidate me again, but this time it wouldn't work. I had spent too long carefully building my escape plan, securing my independence and ensuring that I would never be at his mercy again. I had prepared for this moment. You're wrong, I replied coolly, not giving him the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. I've already taken care of everything. There are people in my corner now. People you can't control. I'm not alone in this anymore. His face shifted again, this time to something darker. There was no longer any pretense of politeness or calculated charm. Now he was just a man whose empire was beginning to crumble, struggling to hold on to the one thing that had once given him all his power, control over me. You really think anyone's going to believe you over me? He sneered, stepping forward as if to physically intimidate me. You think you can just go public and make me out to be the villain? No one will care. You'll be nothing. Your reputation will be destroyed before you even get the chance to speak your truth. But it wasn't his words that unsettled me now. It was the desperation, the thinly veiled panic behind his eyes that betrayed his outward arrogance. He wasn't just trying to scare me. He was scared. He was afraid of losing everything, of being exposed for the manipulator that he truly was. And I could see that now, clearly for the first time. The truth of who he really was, what he had done to me and countless others, had always been there. But it had taken this confrontation, this battle for control, to make me realize how truly powerless he had become in the face of my resolve. You're right, I said suddenly, my voice cold. I don't need anyone to believe me. I don't need anyone to save me. I've already taken steps to make sure my future is secure, and no one can take that from me. Not even you. His face contorted, and for the briefest of moments I saw a flicker of fear, the kind that only comes when someone realizes they've been defeated. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came. There was nothing left he could say that would change the course of what was happening. I was no longer the woman he had married, the woman who had been afraid to stand up for herself, afraid of the consequences. I had transformed into something stronger. Someone who was no longer dependent on him, no longer bound by his manipulation. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my own life, my independence, and my power. It was about showing him that I didn't need him to define me. I think you've said enough, I said with a finality that left no room for argument. This marriage is over. And you've lost. For a long moment there was only silence between us. I stood tall, watching him as he struggled to process everything I had just said. And in that silence I knew that I had won. He had lost his grip on me and there was nothing he could do to get it back. The silence between us felt thick, oppressive, almost suffocating. I stood there, facing him, the man I had once believed was my partner. The man I had trusted with my heart, my life, my future. Yet in this moment I realized how wrong I had been. The power had shifted. He no longer held the reins and there was no turning back. His anger was palpable, but now there was something else behind his eyes. A glimmer of fear. It was as if he finally understood that he had miscalculated. The walls he had so carefully built around me had crumbled, leaving me standing free, exposed, but undeniably empowered. He had tried to control every aspect of my life. My finances, my decisions, my very sense of self. But now he was helpless. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his hands trembled just slightly. He had thought he could break me, but instead he had unknowingly created the woman standing before him now. A woman with a plan, a woman who would no longer bend to his will. I watched him carefully, my gaze steady and unwavering. He was fumbling now, trying to figure out how to regain the control he had lost, but it was clear that he had no idea how to navigate this new dynamic. His usual sharp, authoritative demeanor was faltering. The facade of invulnerability was cracking, piece by piece. He had never considered that I could rise above him, that I could take back my power, and now he was facing the consequences of that arrogance. "You think you've won?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration, though there was something else there now, something like desperation. "You think you've beaten me? You think this is the end?" I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. The truth was already there, hanging in the air between us, loud and clear. He had underestimated me. He had always thought I was just another piece of the puzzle, a convenient part of his empire, a role he could mold to his liking. But I wasn't a part of his puzzle anymore. I had broken free of his influence, and no amount of anger or manipulation could put the pieces back together. I wasn't his to control anymore. I took a slow step toward him, my expression calm but firm. "This isn't about winning or losing," I said, my voice low but filled with quiet strength. "This is about taking control of my life. Something you never let me do." His eyes flickered, the anger rising once again, but there was no fire behind it, only a shallow attempt to maintain his authority. "You're making a mistake. You're throwing everything away. All the years we've spent together, everything we've built. You can't just walk away from it all." I almost laughed at the absurdity of his words. Everything we had built? The years we spent together? It had never been a partnership. It had always been a one-sided arrangement where his needs, his desires, his control had come first. I had sacrificed so much for the sake of this marriage, for the sake of maintaining an illusion of happiness. But the truth was, I had been suffocating, drowning under the weight of his demands, his expectations. I had been living in a gilded cage and now I was finally free. "You never built anything for me," I said, my voice tinged with bitterness. "You built it all for yourself. I was just an accessory, something to fill a role. But not anymore." For the first time I saw a crack in his composure, a brief flicker of vulnerability. He opened his mouth to say something but then stopped. He was trying to find the right words, trying to regain his footing, but it was clear that the ground was shifting beneath him and he didn't know how to stabilize it. "You don't know what you're doing," he said, his voice softer now but with a tone of warning. "You think you can just walk away from this, but it's not that simple. There's a lot more at stake here than you realize." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, to ignore the nagging doubt that tried to creep into my mind. I had come so far and I couldn't afford to second-guess myself now. He had always known how to play on my emotions, how to make me question my worth, my decisions. But not anymore. I wasn't that woman anymore. I had changed and there was no going back. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said quietly, locking eyes with him. "And I'm not afraid." His expression faltered, the frustration turning to something else. Something darker, more dangerous. "You think you're in control?" he hissed, his voice low. "You think you can just walk away with everything, with your little investments and your so-called independence? I'll make sure you regret this. I'll destroy you." The threat hung in the air between us, but it didn't have the same effect it once would have. The fear I might have felt before, the panic that used to consume me in the face of his wrath, had been replaced by something else entirely. Certainty. I knew now that no matter what he said or did, I was in control. I had already secured my future. I had already built the foundation for my new life, one that didn't rely on him or his manipulative ways. "You don't scare me anymore," I said, the words sharp and final. "You don't have the power to control me. Not anymore." The words seemed to land like a slap to the face. His eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of true uncertainty in them. He had always been the one with the upper hand, the one who called the shots, who made the rules. But now the game had changed. He was no longer the one in control. The fear that I had once seen in him was now palpable, as though he was beginning to realize that he had lost. "Do you really think it's that easy?" he asked again, his voice barely a whisper but with an edge of desperation now. "Do you really think you can just walk away and leave me with nothing?" I shook my head slowly, the smile on my face small but full of quiet triumph. "I don't need to leave you with nothing," I said. "You've already given me everything I need. And I'm walking away with everything I deserve." There was nothing more to say. The battle had been fought and I had won. As I stood there watching him struggle with the reality of it all, I realized that this moment wasn't just about me walking away from him. It was about reclaiming myself, my life, and my future. And in that moment I knew that no matter what happened next, I was no longer afraid. The weight of his stunned silence stretched out in the room like a thick fog, but I wasn't about to let him off the hook just yet. He stood there, rooted to the spot, his mind racing to catch up with the truth that had just been revealed to him. His eyes were wide, pupils darting around as if searching for a way out, some angle he could use to regain the power he had so carefully hoarded over the years. But there was no escape now. The game had changed and he was on the losing side. I watched him carefully, a quiet satisfaction bubbling up in my chest as I saw the color drain from his face. It wasn't about victory for me anymore. It was about liberation. I was finally free of the hold he had on me for so long, and in that freedom I had reclaimed my sense of self, my autonomy. I had fought for it in ways he couldn't have imagined, and now I had everything I needed to build a new life. One that didn't revolve around him or his cruel manipulations. "You didn't see this coming, did you?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with an edge. "You thought you controlled everything, every move I made, every penny I spent, every decision I made. But you missed one thing." He looked up at me, his jaw clenched, eyes narrowing as if trying to summon some semblance of authority. "You think I'll just let you take everything?" His words were sharp but they lacked conviction. The desperation in his voice was a clear sign of the fear creeping in, slowly but surely. "You think I'll just sit back and watch you walk away with everything?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my bones. I had spent too many years allowing him to dictate the terms of my life, allowing him to convince me that I was nothing without him. But now I knew the truth: he was nothing without me. He had tried to erase me, to diminish my worth, to make me believe that I was merely an accessory to his success. But the reality was, I had always been the one who held the power. It had just taken me a long time to realize it. "You don't get to dictate anything anymore," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. "I've already made sure of that." His eyes flickered, a brief flash of panic dancing behind them as he processed my words. He had always been the one with the final say, the one who made the rules, but now the script had flipped. He was no longer in control, and I could see it in the way he stood there, unable to fully grasp the enormity of what had just happened. "You're not the one in charge here," I continued, my voice dropping lower. "I've already taken the steps to secure my future. Everything I need is already in place. You're too late to stop me." His face twisted in confusion. "What are you talking about? What steps? What future?" I smiled inwardly at the simplicity of his question. He had never even considered that I could plan for myself. In his mind, I had always been a follower, someone who would simply go along with whatever he decided. But I had outgrown that role long ago. And now I was about to reveal the full extent of the steps I had taken to ensure that I would never again be dependent on him or anyone else. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, placing it on the table between us. His eyes widened as he saw the official-looking documents inside. "What is this?" he asked, his voice now tinged with a mix of curiosity and growing trepidation. "Do you really think I would trust you with my future?" I asked, my eyes never leaving his. "These are the contracts I've secured. Investments, properties, business ventures. All in my name. They're untouchable. Every step I've taken has been calculated to ensure that no matter what happens, I'll walk away with everything I need to build my own life. A life without you. I could see his breathing quicken, the realization settling in. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, but he said nothing, seemingly too stunned to react. This was the moment when he truly understood just how thoroughly I had planned for this. He had thought he could control me, that he could trap me in a corner and force me into compliance. But I wasn't the naive woman I had been when I first met him. I had learned. I had grown. And now I was finally in control of my own destiny. "You've been playing a dangerous game," I said, leaning forward slightly, my voice steady and cold. "But the truth is, you were never the mastermind. I was. You just didn't see it." His face was a mixture of disbelief and anger now, his thoughts clearly spiraling. I could see him trying to find a way to regain some measure of control, to turn the situation back in his favor. But it was too late. The pieces had already fallen into place and he was no longer the one calling the shots. "You think you've won?" he asked again, this time his voice more brittle, as if the idea of losing was something he could hardly bear. "You think you can just walk away, leaving me with nothing?" I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms across my chest. "I don't want anything from you. I just want my freedom. And I've already taken the steps to ensure I get it." His eyes were wild now, searching my face for any sign of hesitation, any crack in my resolve. But there was none. I had come too far, fought too hard, and sacrificed too much to let him pull me back into his web. This was the end of the road for us. "I've been patient," I said, my voice dropping even lower. "But now it's over. I've already made the arrangements and I'm walking away. You can try to destroy my reputation, ruin my name, but it won't matter. The foundation I've built is stronger than anything you can throw at me." The finality of my words seemed to hit him like a slap to the face. His expression faltered, a flicker of fear crossing his features before he quickly masked it with anger. But it was too late. I had already won. "You'll regret this," he muttered under his breath, his eyes narrowing in frustration. I shook my head slowly. "No. You'll regret underestimating me. You'll regret thinking you could control me." There was nothing more to say. The last remnants of his control had slipped through his fingers, and now he was left standing there, realizing just how thoroughly I had outsmarted him. The marriage was over, the battle had been won, and my future was secure. I was free. The room was heavy with the scent of the air freshener, but it did little to mask the tension that had settled in the space. It was as though the walls themselves were closing in around me, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if it was a mistake to feel so calm. The world outside felt far away, muted by the hum of my own thoughts. I had done it. I had taken back my life, secured my future, and torn down everything that had kept me shackled to him. But even with the victory in my hands, there was still a shadow hanging over me. I had to remind myself that it wasn't just the end of the marriage. It was the beginning of something new, something free. The weight of the past few years had been a constant companion, one I had fought to push away. But now that the battle was over, the dust was settling and I had to face the consequences of everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed to get to this point. There was a knock at the door, interrupting my thoughts. I stood still for a moment, the sudden sound like a jolt to my system. Who could it be? My fingers tightened around the edge of the table as I hesitated. Slowly, I made my way to the door and opened it. Standing in front of me was a lawyer, his expression unreadable but serious. He had been one of the people I had consulted early on, helping me put everything in place. "I thought you might want to hear this," he said, handing me a folder, his voice low but firm. "I've just received confirmation from the court. The papers have been filed and the settlement has been agreed upon. It's all official now. You're free." I stared at the folder for a moment, the words written in ink on the page telling me what I had known in my heart. It was done. The divorce was final. The prenup I had worked so hard to turn in my favor had been accepted, and now I held the key to my future. Yet the relief I thought would come wasn't as instantaneous as I had hoped. There was still a gnawing sense of unease, a feeling that the fight was far from over. The lawyer seemed to sense my hesitation. "I understand this is a big moment," he said. "But you need to know you're not just walking away with assets and investments. You've made sure that the future you're building for yourself is completely independent. No one can take that from you now." I nodded slowly, my throat tight. I had built this life with my own hands, making careful decisions and watching my every step. But now, as I held the official papers in my hands, I felt the enormity of the choice I had made. The past few months had been a whirlwind of meetings, careful planning, and covert strategies. I had been focused on winning, on making sure I had a clear path ahead of me. But now, as the lawyer turned to leave, I realized just how alone I felt. My phone buzzed on the table beside me, cutting through the silence. The sudden sound was jarring, but I knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. It was him. My ex-husband. I stared at the message for a long moment, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to read it. I didn't need to read it. But curiosity got the better of me and I picked up the phone. Don't think this is over. I'll make sure you regret everything. No one will believe your lies. I'll make sure of it. The words on the screen were as venomous as I had imagined, and for a moment, I felt a flash of anger rise up inside me. He thought he could still control me from a distance, still make me feel small, insignificant. But I didn't have to react. I had already won. His words didn't hold power over me anymore. I set the phone down and exhaled slowly, reminding myself that the end of this marriage was my victory, not his. But as much as I told myself I was done with him, the lingering effects of the years we spent together began to surface. I had been through so much to break free from his control, and now the reality of it hit me in waves. The emotional toll had been steep, and while I had achieved financial independence, I knew there was more work to be done. It wasn't just the business ventures or investments that mattered now. It was about rebuilding myself from the inside out. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I worked with my lawyer to ensure the final details were squared away, signing off on everything that needed to be done. As much as I had taken the steps to protect myself, there was still the nagging feeling that I wasn't quite free. It was during one of those long meetings with my lawyer that I found out the next piece of the puzzle. My ex-husband hadn't just been sending those nasty messages to me. He had also been trying to manipulate the people around me, trying to convince my friends and acquaintances that I had been the one in the wrong. He had been planting seeds of doubt in their minds, hoping to turn them against me. But his efforts were fruitless. The people who mattered, the ones who had always supported me, stood by my side. His influence had never been as strong as he had believed it to be. "Don't let him get to you," my lawyer said as we sat in his office reviewing the next steps. "He's lashing out because he's losing. You've done everything right and now he's just trying to hold on to the little power he has left." I nodded, grateful for the reassurance, but there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that this battle wasn't quite over. There would be more hurdles to jump over, more challenges ahead. I had no illusion that the road ahead would be easy. The legal side of things might have been settled, but the emotional aftermath, the healing, would take time. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt the weight of the past few months start to shift. It was no longer about fighting for my independence. That was already secured. Now it was about rebuilding my life, finding new meaning, and moving forward without looking back. The future was wide open, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. The world ahead seemed full of endless possibilities. My investments, my plans, everything I had worked for, were all the foundation I needed to begin a new chapter. I had proven to myself that I was capable of more than just being a passive participant in my own life. I had found my strength, and now it was time to live fully, with no more apologies, no more second-guessing. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to walk it with my head held high, knowing that I had finally secured my own future. The sun was setting on a new chapter of my life, and as I stood there watching the soft glow of orange and pink fill the sky, I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm wash over me. It was strange to think about how much had changed in such a short amount of time. Just months ago, I had felt like a prisoner in my own life, suffocating under the weight of expectations, manipulation, and fear. Now, standing on the precipice of something new, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I had come. The divorce had been the catalyst for my transformation, but it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I had walked away from everything I had known, everything I had been forced to accept, and in its place I had built something stronger. I had built a life on my own terms, and while the road had been long and difficult, the reward was immeasurable. The freedom, the independence, the peace, I had earned it all. But with all the victories, there was still the weight of the aftermath to contend with. It wasn't just about moving on from the marriage. It was about healing, rebuilding, and learning how to live fully again. I couldn't ignore the emotional scars, the years of emotional manipulation that still lingered in the corners of my mind. The power dynamics we had lived with for so long didn't disappear overnight. There were days when the past would catch up to me, when the memories would surface, threatening to drag me back into the shadows. But I had learned how to face those memories, how to sit with them and let them pass. I had learned how to take control of my narrative and rewrite it. No longer would I let him define who I was, what I was capable of, or what my future would look like. My life was mine again, and that meant I had the power to shape it however I saw fit. It wasn't easy, of course. The world didn't just hand you a fresh start because you decided you wanted one. There were people who didn't understand, people who doubted me, who questioned my choices. My ex-husband's attempts to destroy my reputation were still echoing in the background, as he continued to try and manipulate the people around me. His bitterness had only grown, but his attempts to tear me down had grown weaker with every passing day. The more I stood in my truth, the less power he had over me. In a way, his efforts only solidified my conviction. They reminded me that I was on the right path. If he was this threatened by my freedom, then I must have been doing something right. I had been silenced for so long, made to believe that I was nothing without him. And now I was watching him unravel as I flourished. I had taken steps to secure my financial future, ensuring that no matter what happened, I would never have to depend on anyone else again. It wasn't just the investments, the properties, or the business ventures that mattered. It was the strength I had found within myself. The ability to trust my own instincts. The courage to choose my own path no matter how difficult it seemed. I spent hours planning for the future, making sure that I wasn't just surviving but thriving. I reconnected with old friends, ones I had distanced myself from over the years because I had been so focused on keeping the peace with my ex-husband. I found hobbies that reignited my passion, hobbies that had been lost in the chaos of trying to please someone else. I spent time traveling, exploring new places, and rediscovering the world through my own eyes. I had forgotten how much beauty there was in life outside of the confines of my marriage. But even as I moved forward, there were moments when the scars still burned. I had spent so many years being treated like I didn't matter, like my voice wasn't worth hearing. It would take time to undo the damage that had been done. The emotional battles, the years of feeling like I was invisible would take time to heal. But I was no longer afraid of the work. I had spent too long afraid of confronting the truth, of standing in the discomfort of the pain. But now I knew that embracing those emotions was the key to truly moving forward. And then, there were the unexpected moments. The moments when I would feel a sense of peace and pride that I never thought I would experience again. Like when I signed the last of the paperwork, the final step in severing my ties to the past, and realized that I was no longer tied to someone who had held me back for so long. Or when I received a message from a friend I had reconnected with, a message of support and encouragement that reminded me how much I had to offer the world. Those moments were the ones that made the pain worth it. The small victories, the everyday moments of joy, the realization that I was not just surviving but actually living. I was not the woman I had been when I walked into that marriage, broken and uncertain. I was stronger, more self-assured, and more confident than I had ever been. In a way, my ex-husband had done me a favor. He had forced me to confront the deepest parts of myself. The parts one had buried for too long. And in that confrontation I had discovered something powerful. My own resilience. I had learned that I could trust myself, that I could navigate life on my own terms. I walked into the future knowing that I would face challenges, that there would be days when the old scars would ache. But I also knew that I had the strength to face those challenges head-on, to take them in stride and keep moving forward. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was too busy creating the life I had always deserved. The past was behind me, but the future stretched out in front of me, filled with endless possibilities. And this time I was in control. The future wasn't just something that happened to me, it was something I was shaping with every decision, every step I took. This was my new beginning. And I was ready.